The chrome diner glowed like a faded dream in the relentless rain. Alara stared through the rivulet streaking the taxi window, her heart a frantic bird against her ribs. The sign, Roy's All-Night Diner, flickered a sickly neon pink reflecting in the puddles of the cracked parking lot. She could feel the taxi driver's curious glance in the rearview mirror. She knew what he saw. A woman in a couture emerald green dress, diamonds glittering at her throat, sitting in a cab idling outside a place where the special was probably meatloaf and a side of existential dread. "This the place, miss?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "It is," Alara whispered, her breath fogging the glass. This was it, the place from the story, the cheap diner where he'd brought her for their first date 10 years ago. A nervous, brilliant archaeology student trying to impress a girl so far out of his league she might as well have been from another galaxy. He'd had $50 to his name. She'd had a trust fund. He'd ordered them both grilled cheese and shared his life story under the warm, greasy light. And she had fallen, irrevocably and completely, in love. Now, he was Julian Thorne, billionaire tech visionary. And she was Alara Vance, his wife of 8 years, the glittering centerpiece of his impeccable world. They lived in a universe of private jets and galas, a life so polished it had become a cage. And tonight, he had asked to come back here. To talk. The diner door creaked a protest as she pushed it open. The air was thick with the smell of old coffee, frying grease, and lemon-scented disinfectant. A few lone patrons hunched over their mugs, their lives seeming as worn as the red vinyl on their stools. And there he was, in a corner booth, looking as out of place as a diamond in a vending machine. Julian. He still wore the bespoke suit from his board meeting, a stark, beautiful contrast to the crumbling Formica table. He stood as she approached, his movement slow, deliberate. The familiar, handsome lines of his face were etched with a tension she couldn't name. "You came," he said, his voice low. "You asked me to," she replied, sliding into the booth opposite him, the vinyl side beneath her. "Why here, Julian? After all these years, why this place?" He didn't answer immediately. His gaze was locked on her, intense, drinking her in as if she were a mirage. "Do you remember our first date? Right here?" A sad smile touched her lips. "Of course I remember. You told me you were going to decipher the world's oldest mysteries. You were so passionate, so alive." Unlike now, she thought, the words a sharp pain in her chest. Now you're just a ghost in a beautiful house. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that read Flo came over. "What can I get you folks?" she asked, her voice raspy from decades of smoke and small talk. "2 coffees, please," Julian said, his voice strangely thick. "And 2 grilled cheese sandwiches, with pickles." As Flo shuffled away, Alara felt a tear escape, tracing a hot path down her cheek. "You remember the pickles." "I remember everything, Alara." He leaned forward, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. "The way you laughed when I spilled my water. The way you listened, really listened, to my theories about the linear A script. You saw me, not my potential, not a project. Me. I fell in love with you that night," she confessed, the words feeling both sacred and futile in this shabby place. "And I'm still in love with you, Julian. But you've been gone for so long. The company, the travel. I feel like I'm married to a headline." He flinched as if she'd struck him. "I know." He took a shaky breath. "That's why I brought you here. To where it all began. Because I have to tell you something. And I need you to remember the man I was when I sat here with you then. The man who would have given you the world if only he'd had it." The coffees arrived, steaming and bitter. Alara's heart was a drumbeat of dread. This was it. The talk, the end. He was going to say he'd met someone else, that he wanted a divorce. She braced herself, her fingers curling around the warm, thick mug. "Alara," he began, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "A secret for only her. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with glioblastoma multiforme. It's a very aggressive form of brain cancer." The world stopped. The clatter of plates, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the hiss of the grill. It all faded into a high-pitched whine in her ears. She stared at him, unable to process the words. They were foreign, impossible. Words from a medical drama, not from her husband's lips. "What?" she breathed. The headaches, the fatigue, the distance. It wasn't the company. It was the tumors. And the treatment. His eyes, those brilliant, perceptive eyes, glistened with unshed tears. "They've done everything they can. It's inoperable. I have weeks. Maybe a month. No, No, no. The denial was a silent scream inside her head. This wasn't the twist. The twist was supposed to be an affair, a betrayal, something she could rage against, something with a villain. This was just cruel, meaningless fate. Why didn't you tell me? She choked out, her voice breaking. Because I'm a coward, he said. A single tear finally escaping and tracing a path down his cheek. I saw the way you looked at me when I was just a broke student with big dreams. I was a god to you then. I couldn't bear to see that light in your eyes turn to pity. I couldn't stand the thought of your last memories of me being of me. Diminished, sick. I wanted you to be angry at me for being a workaholic, to remember me as strong until the very end. It was selfish. I know that now. The grilled cheeses arrived, sitting between them untouched. A perfect, heartbreaking replica of the meal that had started it all. He reached into his suit jacket, his movement slow and slightly unsteady. He pulled out a small velvet box and slid it across the table. With trembling fingers, Alara opened it. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a simple, old-fashioned key on a fob shaped like a tiny ancient pot. It's the key to a storage unit, he said softly. I've been diverting funds for years, liquidating non-essential assets. Everything is in your name. The company is solid, it will run without me. But this is for you. It's everything I would have spent on you for the rest of our lives. For you to be free. To live, Alara. Really live. She looked from the key to his face, the face she loved more than life itself, and the dam inside her broke. A sob wrenched from her throat, raw and guttural. The shocking twist wasn't an affair or a betrayal. It was this, the ultimate devastating act of love from a man who, faced with his own extinction, had spent his final days not seeking comfort, but building a fortress for her future. He had taken her to the cheap diner not to end their story, but to bring it full circle, to remind her of the boy who had nothing but dreams, so she would understand the man who had given her everything. She reached across the table, her elegant, manicured hand covering his work-roughened one, clinging to it as if she could physically stop time. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the world clean, while inside the faded chrome diner, surrounded by the ghosts of their beginning, Alara held her husband's hand and began the impossible, heartbreaking task of saying goodbye.